earlier where I said about ego.
Yeah.
So if we remove ego out of the picture, then we know that we were there at the journey of the company for a specific time. And that once our time perhaps is up, we have to release that time to somebody else that can take that vehicle forward as
And
well.
propel it to another level.
To another level. Because that was where we were meant to be at that time. We were meant to give birth to it, but then let it go.
Hello everyone, I'm Rina and this is Lessons from the Post-Exit Entrepreneurs Podcast. In the very first episode, I'm honored to be joined by Raymond Chow. He is a serial entrepreneur who has sold 2 of his businesses. He was the CEO of Infront Consulting Group and is the Chief Growth Officer of Owners Circus Asia, as well as the past president of the Entrepreneurs Organization, also known as EO, in Malaysia. In this episode, he shares with us his personal insights and lessons on before, during, and after selling his businesses. He touched on topics like figuring out the valuation and knowing the right buyer for your company, and his experience switching from being the CEO to the employee of the new owner. There is a lot of valuable information that will prepare you if you are looking to sell your business, and also different perspectives that will challenge you to think differently.
Thank you very much for making time to speak with me today, Ray. In the time that I've known you, I've been truly inspired and personally benefited from your generous sharing, from your wealth of experience and your infectious drive and passion.
Wow. I've never had somebody call me infectious before, so thank you.
Yeah, I think it rubs off people, you know. Do you remember the first time we met?
Can't really remember exactly, but I guess it was in some training, right?
Yeah, it was actually during COVID over Zoom. That was the first time I met you. Yeah, I'm not sure if you remember because you were one of the trainers.
Okay.
Yeah. So Ray, for our listeners who may not be aware, he was the previous president of Entrepreneurs Organization in Malaysia, and he also served as one of our trainers. So I met you over Zoom, and I remember I was just struck by your dynamism, and I can feel your energy permeating through the screen. Yeah, so.
Awesome.
And you know, during COVID, it was such like, you know, a time when things are a bit more solemn, you know, people are feeling a bit more down. And just to see this face and see your infectious, you know, energy coming through, it was very inspiring. Yeah. So I had a very positive first time experience of meeting you.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's a belief of mine that energy is very important. Right? Everything starts from energy.
Yeah.
Everything is energy, right? So whatever energy that we want to receive first must come from the energy that we give.
Yeah.
That's always a belief of mine.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Okay, so let's just start off with our interview today. Could you, first of all, you know, give us a very short introduction on the 2 businesses that you have started and you sold?
Sure. The first business was kind of like a business that offered copywriting services and business plan generation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we basically help companies to create business plans. And along the way, because we were doing so much of that, we found that a lot of these businesses also needed copywriting services. This was back in 2008.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it was quite a while ago. And the second business was it was tech company called Infront Consulting.
Yeah.
And that was started actually even earlier than that. So I started that company in 2003. And I sold it in 2021, in the middle of the pandemic.
Right. And how about the copywriting business? When was that sold?
I sold that in 2010, 2 years after I started it.
Wow. How did that happen? It's only 2 years after.
Yeah. So basically I realized after 2 years of the business that it was something that I couldn't grow any further. It was something that I knew there was a demand for, but I think from lack of experience on the copywriting side, I'm not a advertising person in nature, not like you, Rina. So it was something that I knew that it was good for me to start, but pretty much if I continue as it is, the
It
company will
might
probably be
stagnant.
correct. It'll be just like that lah.
Right.
So the person I sold it to was somebody with a lot of passion for it.
Mm.
He was also providing advertising services, so it kind of was
Mm.
complementary to his business.
Yeah.
So then I just said, okay, I'll just sell it. I didn't sell it for a lot of money, but I knew that it was something that this person could take and grow. So
Mm.
I thought, yeah, okay, it was an opportunity and he wanted it. So there you go.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. 2 years after setting up the business.
Yep.
Wow. So from selling that first business, even though it's probably a lot smaller than Infront Consulting from the sounds of it, was there anything from that first experience that actually helped you when you were looking to sell Infront Consulting later on?
I guess one of the things that it taught me was that businesses don't have to start and end with the entrepreneur. And it taught me that, you know what, to really just put ego aside, of having to be the founder of it and potentially growing it big, to really just perhaps let it go to someone else's that can do that instead of ourselves. And it taught me also a very important lesson with regards to time. That
How so?
well, I learned that it taught me a lesson that we only have a very, what do you call it, a structured and finite amount of time. Right? And we all know the concept that time cannot be repeated, time cannot be returned, and so on.
Yeah.
But what do we do with that time? So when I was doing that business, I spent a little bit less time in my technology business and my other business. At that time, I had 3 businesses already. So I realized that I was actually diluting my time.
Yeah, of
And
course.
when I was diluting my time, 3 of the businesses was only okay.
Yeah.
Doing very
They
well.
can't all be good because you can't dedicate yourself. Yeah.
So that was probably my biggest lesson, if I can.
Okay. So I mean for Infront Consulting, you have built it for a lot longer than the copywriting business. So when you say that putting the ego aside to understand that as a founder, you may not be the one to carry through. I guess what you're saying is, the business to propel to a certain stage forever. Even having said that, because Infront Consulting is something that we've built for so many years, there must be, a stronger sense of attachment, right? Yeah, and love towards that company. So, even when you come to that sale, was there any sort of like, a sense of loss even, or conversely a sense of achievement when you manage to sell it in the end? Yeah.
I think there's always a combination of everything that you mentioned, right? But I think to sell a company, it must be something that you think about. It's not something that happens by the way, not for everyone. And it was like when we wanted to sell Infront, it was something that we planned since 2018, and we gave ourselves a 5-year plan to sell the company. And we wanted to sell it for 2 reasons. One was that at that particular moment, which we can talk about later, I had a calling to do something else, and it was something that I believed more strongly at than the technology company that I was running. Although I still was passionate about it, but I realized that once the passion was slowly not dying, but slowly transferring to something else, the effort that you put into the company gets harder and harder.
Yeah.
Right? So do I still have love for the company? Yes, of course. Right?
Yeah.
but understanding that the company is there, which may possibly last longer than even me. And that goes back to the same point earlier where I said about ego.
Yeah.
So if we remove ego out of the picture, then we know that we were there at the journey of the company for a specific time. And that once our time perhaps is up, we have to release that time to somebody else that can take that vehicle forward as
And
well,
propel it to another level.
to another
Yeah.
level, because that was where we were meant to be at that time. We were meant to give birth to it, but then let it go.
That actually sounds so philosophical, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting perspective also, I think. Yeah, from what people would normally feel about selling a company. Yeah.
And I think, sorry, I'll just add on a little bit. I think I feel that, and I talk to a lot of business owners.
Yeah.
One of the weaknesses, okay, maybe weakness is not the right word to use, but one of the things that I feel business owners has to learn about is this understanding of detachment from the business. I think we get so attached to the business, just like a human baby. And you know, you'll never obviously give a human baby up.
Yeah.
But we treat the business so much like a human baby that we get so attached to it. And sometimes that attachment may be the start of a downfall.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree with you. Yeah. Or even prevent you from selling the business, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's ego driven.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that topic of like not holding on to the company and not treating it really like a human baby, right? So I have this hypothetical question. I don't think the buyer that you sold to is similar to this scenario that I'm giving, but so hypothetically, okay, so say somebody wants to buy Infront Consulting for a huge sum of money. Okay, maybe it's the value is way more than what you had originally valued your company for. Okay, but say the buyer's values are very different from yours, right? Would you still have sold the company to this buyer and walk away with a huge sum of money, but knowing that the future direction of the company will not be aligned with what you would have in mind? Because some people, you know, their mindset, some people say that, you know, when you sold the company, whatever happens after the sale is none of your business, right? Yeah. So do you agree with that mindset? And what's your view on it?
I think there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
I feel that it's really depending on the values of the business owner. What do you truly want from the sale? That is actually not a hypothetical question, because that is actually a real scenario.
Yeah, exactly.
When I sold the company, we had 9 offers. And out of the 9 offers, 7 of them were public listed companies. And there were some of those companies which were actually offering us a higher value than the company that we chose. But I knew that those companies were, the reason they were buying the company was because during the pandemic, a digital company was hot item, right?
Yeah.
Value, right? So they
Yes.
knew that acquiring a digital company to be part of the portfolio would raise their stock market levels up.
Yeah.
But I knew they had no growth plans. I knew they had no visions, and I knew that they didn't have the capabilities to take the company further. So when I wanted to sell the company in 2018, I was very, very clear. I wanted to find a partner or somebody that could acquire the company that would benefit them.
Yeah.
And would take the company even further. And it would help my team and my staff to be able to go on a even bigger journey, right, than what I could have done for them. And this was always my promise to them when I first started the company, or when they joined me. That one day, I want to build you guys up so that you can take this journey on even further than even I can.
Yeah.
So it's very important to me that I found the right partner in that sense. But again, I'm going back to your question. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If you want to sell it just to the highest bidder, and not care about what happens next. It really just depends on the values that you believe in.
Yeah. So you had so many offers, and that was amazing, right? And so how did you go about? So you said you started this process since 2018. So did you actually engage like a M&A broker to help you to, keep a lookout for potential acquirers, or did they find you? How was that process like?
So I think I learned from my first sale, and also talking to a couple of my good friends about their experience selling companies. And when we decided in 2018, the first thing I did was to question ourselves, who would potentially buy us? And I think that having that understanding of the who, which is similar like any business, we would need to understand who would be our potential customers and who would buy our products.
Yeah.
Same thing. So we looked at what would be the potential buyer of our company. And one of the industries that we earmarked or we decided on was telcos.
Oh,
Because
okay.
we realized that, and a lot of my other friends in other countries, in Europe and so on, and in Australia, they were already starting to be acquired as early as 3 to 4 years before that. So I knew that, so I started to research the telco companies and why are they going to acquire technology companies. I realized that telcos, the charging model of telcos is going down. So I remember like even in Singapore, you called somebody and the person that you called even had to pay for the call,
Yeah.
right? Stuff like that, right? We had to pay for every SMS. Then now every telco just charge a flat fee and you can use almost unlimited calls and so on, right? So telcos needed to have a different revenue model, and technology was a very easy choice because technology complemented communications. So then I asked myself, what would a telco want from us? So I started to shape our business and shape our company towards what a telco would possibly want. We started to develop apps that would basically be able to take more of the communication channel of 4G and 5G. We started to build certain industry solutions for rural areas. Like we started to conceptualize this idea of building a app that would improve chicken farming for the rural area.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I knew that one of the piece in that pie would be the mobile devices and the mobile lines. So I guess one of the things that we did at the start was this, right? And then
At the point when you decided you wanted to sell, you mean?
Yes.
Like from 2018 onwards, that's
Correct.
when you started preparing all of this.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
And this actually gave us a kind of a path and a guideline. So we didn't hire any brokers at the start, right? Because we were just in a mindset of shaping our companies first, right? We also started making sure that our books are clean, right? When I say books are clean, it means that we needed to be very, very structured with regards to our finances. Because at the end of the day, I knew that if a public listed company was to take over or acquire our company, compliance would be the number one thing that they would look at. So things like we needed to make sure that there was no areas that we left out. We needed to make sure that we are profitable. Because if somebody wants to buy a company, nobody is going to buy a company which is not profitable.
Yeah.
Right? So we need to be able to show profit, and as much as possible, right? Because that's how we are measured. So it's times a multiplier. So this meant, and I would say this is probably one advice I'll give anybody who's listening here is don't treat your bank account like your personal account. Like what most business owners will probably do, because we feel that, hey, it's my company.
I can just use it. It's my bank account.
Revenue comes in, is my money. So stop buying bags for your wife, cars for your husbands, using the company money and stuff like that. So it just has to be profitable. So that's kind of how we shaped at the start. And then slowly just making sure. And that's why we gave ourselves a 5-year time frame.
Wow, so it's actually quite a long-term plan when you decided to sell. It wasn't like, okay, today I'm looking to sell, you look for a broker tomorrow, and then within, I don't know, 1 or 2 years, you find your buyer and so forth. Yeah. So
Because
there's a long process of planning.
long process also because we had an idea of what kind of what we wanted to sell at,
Yeah.
the amounts we want to sell and so on. And I felt that at that point in 2018, if we sold the company at that point, we were not going to get that valuation.
Yeah, that you wanted.
So we needed a structure to be able to move towards that.
Yeah. So it was very intentional. Yeah. So did you guys then go about, since you have your TA, your target audience in mind, did you then go about wooing these potential acquirers or?
Yep. So in a way, we subtly kind of just let the industry know. At that time also, most of the telcos in Malaysia was my customers.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, perfect.
We did work for them anyway.
Yeah.
Kind of just slowly seeded the message across.
Yeah.
Not loudly advertising it, but kind of just prompting that, hey, you know what? We're looking.
Yeah, we're exploring. Yeah. If you know anyone. Yeah. Cool. And so how did you value your company? And how would you know if the valuation was fair?
Very interesting. So I think number one was that, like I mentioned earlier, a couple of my other friends which were operating similar businesses, but in other countries, had already sold. Basically talking to them, understanding what were their multipliers, how did they value their company, helped.
Yeah.
Second, we went to do some research on public listed companies. Public listed companies, the accounts are all open, right? And looked at what were their multipliers, what were their market caps and their multipliers. So that helped. And then lastly, we basically asked our accountant. And our accountant basically just helped us to explain what were the different types of valuation methods and what would possibly be something that most acquirers would look at. So just doing some research. We didn't hire a valuator. I guess probably you would get faster answers by hiring a valuator. I was just a cheapskate. I just didn't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
I'm somebody that just loves to learn, so I just wanted to just learn how to do it. But at the end of the day, what was something interesting was this. So we had our valuation in mind and things like that. And when the day came that we were being courted, so before even a due diligence exercise happens, and this is something that is very new to me, we were asked by our acquirers, actually, how much do you want?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, no matter what valuation it is, it doesn't matter, right? Whatever valuation is that you sell it at is just a number that we perceive that it is worth that much, and it is something that is justifiable. So I realized later that the reason why our acquirers asked that was because obviously they had a budget.
Yeah.
And they just wanted to see whether it meets their budgets.
Yeah.
Right? As the first cut. And if it meets the budgets, then they say, okay, let's carry on. That
let's carry on a conversation and don't waste anybody's time if your valuation is way above what they have in mind, right? Yeah.
I mean, don't go over the moon and just value your company 100 times more than what it is. But if you feel so, I call it the walk away number. Right? Means that if somebody just offered you the amount, and even if it's lower than what you thought it would be, what would it be?
Yeah.
If you just take it and just walk away.
Yeah.
So I think all business owners need to have that number in mind.
Yeah.
It will help them guide their decisions. Right? Because sometimes the process of selling a company isn't that short or isn't that straightforward.
Yeah. Can be a very long process, especially with the due diligence, right?
Absolutely. I know some friends take years sometimes.
Yeah. So other than the valuation, on hindsight, now that you've already sold two companies, right? Would there have been any other way you would have structured it so there could have been more upside, or, other than valuation, were there anything else that you wish you could have done or negotiated for?
Mm, not really. I think
Mm,
I knew kind of what I wanted.
yeah.
Although I didn't get fully what I wanted. So I wanted a 100% uh, uh, acquisition at the start.
Mm,
But none of our
mm,
acquirers wanted that 100% acquisition.
yeah.
And it's rightfully so, right? Because a
Mm,
lot or most of the acquirers, that their offer was basically they really needed somebody to
stay
um,
on.
stay on and at
Mm,
least transfer that information over,
yeah.
right?
Mm,
Although I felt that there wasn't a need for me anymore.
mm,
Um, so most of them offered a majority buy,
yeah.
right? And then the remaining buy will be probably after 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Mm,
Um, but what I wanted and I got was a full settlement of that amount of the majority buy at the start.
mm,
Um, I didn't want to earn out,
yeah.
and that was something that I knew from the start.
Yeah.
So earn out could be potentially more, but that wasn't what I wanted. Yeah.
Mm,
So I don't think there was anything else that probably I didn't get from what I wanted in the deal.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. I think probably the experience sharing from your friends and your research and all that helped you, get the right figure in mind already. Yeah. So I have a question with regards to what you just said, but before that, um, so I was wondering, okay, so Infront Consulting is in the professional services industry. You obviously have some proprietary technologies and all that your potential acquirer or your acquirer was interested in. So if somebody else is also in the professional services industry and let's say their business does not have predictability in terms of their uh, repeatability in terms of their revenue. Let's say it's very project based. It could be a web development company or even like an interior design company. It's very project based, right? How viable do you think a company like that could be sold? How would you recommend for them to position or prepare themselves for that sale?
Um, I feel that if it's purely relying on professional services, the company needs to be a brand, or rather, it needs to be
Mm,
able to be found. So it
mm,
needs to be at a state where um, companies go and find. It doesn't have to be like extremely, extremely famous, but it needs to be at a state where people already know who they are.
recognize the name.
All
Yeah.
right. Or
Mm,
or they have a very sizable database that whoever that's acquiring may want to tap onto that database,
mm,
or or they may have a particular service or product that can tap onto the acquirer's database, right? So in our case was the third one. We have some recurring businesses in there, and that was a draw. But I think the way that we shaped it was that telcos had a huge database of customers, and we had products that could basically enhance or tap onto the database that they already have. So that was a big draw for,
mm,
for them to acquire.
mm,
But if a company just has professional services alone and it is not something which is they cannot prove that they can get more business easily.
mm.
I feel that it's very hard for an
Right.
investor or an acquirer to be attracted to that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the
Because
day,
there's no guarantee that this business will still continue to be viable, right? Yeah.
correct. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to realize that it's an investment that goes in,
Yeah.
which the acquirer will need to recover back at
Yeah.
least, right? At least recover back that. So in any investment, there must be a return on that investment.
Mm,
So there must be a justification or proof that the return can be And it can't be just that, don't worry, I can get it done. I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody's going
It
to
can't be based on your words, right? Yeah.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So going back to that earlier point, you were talking about how your acquirer wanted you to stay on and basically do that handover for a couple of years, right? What was that like for you? Transitioning from a CEO to almost as though you're like the employee of the new owner, right? So yeah, from a boss to an employee, was that an easy transition or was that difficult? Yeah.
It was very tough for me.
Mm.
It is
Mm.
something that I didn't expect,
Yeah.
but in the end, I feel that it was a tough journey because I'm not sure if it applies to everybody.
Yeah.
But for me, my biggest attraction of being an entrepreneur is the control of time.
Mm.
And not having that control of time anymore, it's just like cutting one leg, cutting off one leg of mine, and I'm limping. I
Yeah.
can get through, I can walk to the next stop, but then it's slow and it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Um, and I could not get my mind out of the understanding that now I had to report to somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering about that. Yeah.
Right, whatever that I wanted to make a decision, there were some decisions that I could not make.
Yeah.
I had to wait for a decision to come. And it was very frustrating because I'll give you an example. Because now we were part of a larger company,
Mm.
and rightfully so, right? There are more processes, and the processes take a longer time.
Mm.
When
Mm.
I was just running the company, I can be the one that just make the decision.
Yeah, just yes, go ahead, or no, we're not going to do this. Yeah.
But now it has to probably go through 3 to 4
The
processes
red tape, right? Yeah.
get approved, right? And there were a couple of times where we actually did not meet a deadline of a tender application, right? A tender submission, sorry,
Because of the delay of the processes.
because of the delay.
Oh man. Okay.
So, again, it's not blaming the process because it is a process, right?
Yeah.
It has to be
It's there
followed.
for a reason.
But it was frustrating for me,
Mm.
right? And I just couldn't accept it in that sense. So I guess if you are prepared for it, and if you can shift your mindset towards not having to being in the position not to have to make all decisions yourself, and being with a follower mindset in that sense, then I guess it's okay. But for me, it isn't. I'm just a rebel by nature, I guess.
Okay, that's awesome. And what would be your advice for someone who is looking to sell their business? What would be some of the key things you would advise them to look out for? I think you mentioned a few earlier. Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, right? Knowing who you're going to sell to will definitely help a lot, because it will create a path for you.
Yeah.
And rather than just stabbing the dark, right? You don't know where to go and find and sell to. Second is I mentioned this to make sure that your books are clean, because it will shorten the due diligence process a lot. Back when we went through the due diligence process, the auditors and the hired lawyers that was hired by the acquirers to come and do the due diligence on us actually commented that we are one of the fastest due diligence process because we were so clean. And it was all answers were there.
Yeah.
There were nothing that was very little other than a couple of receipts that were in question and things like that. But everything else was very, very okay, good. And that also showed our acquirers that
give them confidence, right?
Yeah. Right. We were a trustable company.
Yeah.
Especially that they were a public listed company. I guess the third one I would say an advice is to if possible, don't negotiate or do the acquisition yourself. Get a lawyer to help you, get a friend who's a lawyer to help you. 2 things you will benefit from that. One is that you will not let emotions get in the way.
Yeah.
because somebody else is doing the negotiations for you.
Yeah.
And second, it will help you with regards to the contracts and the documentations.
Mm.
I've seen many friends got bitten before where they just sign the agreements and not really understanding what they've signed. And it bites them back a couple of years later when they suddenly found that they could not get their earnouts and they
Oh,
could
wow.
not
Mm.
being manipulated, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the years of work down the drain, basically. Yeah.
So don't save money on a lawyer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's money that needed to be spent. Yeah. And say somebody has already, the deal has already gone through, maybe they are in the earn-out phase and all that. And you have already sold two of your businesses, you have already exited them officially. How would you recommend these people, prepare themselves for life post-exit, perhaps mentally or emotionally?
Mm.
Mm,
Like I said earlier, I think one is that you, I guess, well, keep your eyes on the price lah. If it's an earnout that you're doing, then if it's important for you to have that earnout, then just block everything aside and just focus your attention on that, right?
mm,
It's definitely not going to be easy, right?
mm,
Especially if you feel that things today must be like how it used to be,
mm,
right? It's never going to be. It's never going to happen.
mm,
For me, also, it didn't happen, and especially it really depends, I guess, who you sell it to. For us, because we sold it to a larger company and a public listed company, the people that I reported to wasn't the entrepreneur, wasn't the founder, wasn't the business owner. They were all they were all hired professionals.
So they were not the same people that you spoke to
No,
during the negotiation process. So you've never met them, pretty
no.
much. Wow. Okay.
So
Yeah.
and like it or not, the people that I report to are, because they're hired professionals, they may change throughout the years.
Mm,
Somebody you talk
mm,
to today is not going to be the same person that you talk to maybe even next year.
mm,
So that journey is going to be challenging because it may reset itself every single time somebody new comes in and you have to deal with the new person. So just understanding that mindset of, if you're earning out, keep your eyes on the price, um, and that you're helping somebody to recover back their investment,
mm,
right? And because of that, your reward is that you will get the earnout in return,
mm,
right? For me, it was different. For me, I didn't have an earnout, so I guess I didn't have that motivation to stick around and tahan all the bullshit or whatever that I was going
yeah.
through during that time, right? So I was supposed to serve for 3 years, but I didn't, right? So I exited the company after almost 2 years, almost about a year and 1 year and about 8 to 9 months.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm. You are very keen to move on to the next chapter that you already started, right?
correct,
Yeah.
right.
Mm,
And I always believe that things happen for a reason.
mm,
You can't really question it, and you know the reason for the request to exit early was also done for a reason, and
mm,
it's probably so that I can focus on what I'm supposed to be doing moving forward, right?
mm,
Rather than sticking on, and I'm not contributing and I'm frustrated, and stuff like that.
mm. Okay, cool. And so you are launching a podcast
Hmm.
on faith-based entrepreneurs, since we're on the topic of your next chapter, right? So here's my last question on the topic of being an entrepreneur who's a Christian. Would you be able to share one story of how God was very real and present in your business journey so far?
Wow, I think that deserves probably another podcast.
Yeah, an episode in itself.
But I think multiple areas, right?
Mm,
I think the first most significant one was through every challenge that I face, right?
mm,
Somehow certain things gets sorted itself out. And I don't know how to explain it other than it's an act of God, right?
mm,
In 2010, my business almost collapsed. right? Almost went bankrupt.
Mm.
But there was a person that suddenly appeared during that journey, and that person just asked me, or took me through a journey of gratefulness in the midst of chaos. And just that single act alone helped me to recover back my business. So many other challenging situations as well. And I realized that when every time that challenge happens, in the past, I would think that I don't deserve even a prayer, right? I don't deserve to even pray to ask for it because I caused that situation, or it was my choice that that situation happened, right? But then when I learned that, no matter what happens in good or bad times, to basically just look up and just pray and ask for his guidance, it taught me how to surrender outcomes. Surrender outcomes, because actually the outcomes really are not in our control.
It's not up to you, yeah.
Absolutely. So we are all vehicles. We are placed there. We were asked. We were being placed to start this company and do this and learn that and take this challenge. And although we are supposed to do our best, but the outcome really is, we should be surrendering that outcome and then let God decide, or even sometimes fight the battle for us. So even in this journey that I'm going on with Owner Circle, and really impacting business owners, and how I was called to do this back in 2018, it was really mind blowing in that sense. And when I trusted him that this was a journey, because it's an education company, and I can tell you honestly, Rina, that I would never in my life thought that I would be running an education company, because this was a type of company that I never wanted to do. Because in the many businesses that I've done, I know that education is a business that is very hard to scale.
Yeah.
So from a business standpoint alone, I would say no.
Doesn't make sense.
Yes. So I was really going, oh God, why do you ask me to do this?
Do I really have to?
Do I really have to, and all that? And I think the process of learning to trust him, really, I can't tell you how amazing the journey has been. It's just people are being brought to me. People calls me up, and it's not like I've been doing training for my entire life, right? It's not like I've been teaching for my entire life. I've just started in 2018, which was probably about 5 years ago, 4 to 5 years ago. And just that success when you trust, it's something that I felt was really the act of God that that will lift all stress and burden from you if you learn how to surrender and trust.
It's very freeing when you just leave the outcome to him and trust that he knows what he's doing, even when things are a mess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Even the our faith podcast, faith-based entrepreneurship podcast is going to be called Risen.
All right.
And the person I'm doing with is a very, very famous radio host in Malaysia. And just, I would never dream of hosting this podcast with her, because she's like ultra famous, right? And just the fact that, he chose her to be brought to do this, and the fact that she was also a Christian, and the fact that we were actually, a friend tried to connect us together many years ago, 7-8 years ago, but it didn't happen. But this time when it did, this podcast is the birth of it. So yeah, I don't know what else to tell you, that you just have to.
Well, it's his time, right? So he knows that now is the right time. Yeah.
Correct. And no matter
I'm looking forward to tune in. Yeah.
no matter how you feel that it's not the right time for you, it is the right time.
Yeah. Okay. And for our listeners that's tuning in, how can they find you? Perhaps share your social media handle. And the podcast is going to be called Risen. So can you find it on Spotify or?
So we are not launching yet. We're
Yeah.
going to be launching very, very soon. We're going to be launching on Christmas Day,
Mm.
which I'm not sure when this podcast will be aired.
Yeah.
But just go on. My Instagram handle is the Ray Chow, TheRayChou. I'm sure I'll be advertising it on my Instagram. So stay tuned.
All right. Thank you very much, Ray, once again for spending time with me. I've learned a lot from your sharing.
Thank you so much, Rina, and all the best to
Thank you.
you and your other guests.
Thanks very much. See ya.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you have, please consider hitting subscribe and leave a review on Spotify and share with anyone whom you think might find this useful. I would also love to hear from you. Do let me know what are some of your key takeaways from this episode. Also, if you have any feedback or suggestions on what you would like to hear on this podcast, do let me know as well. I look forward to learning and growing with you through this podcast. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.